Hey, everybody, welcome to the True Crime Squad. I'm Kristi Brower, here with my sister, co host, and partner in crime, Katie Weaver. Hey, Katie,
Hello.
how's it going?
It's going well.
Have you fully recovered from court?
Yeah. Well, I'm tired. Yeah, I've been sick for a
Too.
week, and so
Yeah.
I'm not like contagious sick. I just have my own little infection going on. So, yeah, this is the first time I've really left my house and done much of anything in a while. So I'm a little tired. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Me
It was
too.
an interesting day at court, though. It wasn't super intense or anything, but
Yeah.
it's all somewhat intense in that courtroom. So,
Well, yeah, it is. Just being there and being in their presence and the presence of all the attorneys and stuff. There's a lot of tension in the room the whole time.
mm-hmm,
But it was interesting. We learned some new things. Some stuff
mm-hmm,
got pushed to next in 2 weeks when the next
mm-hmm.
hearing is. Some stuff got done behind closed doors. So there's a big not surprise
Yep.
for this case. But let's jump
But that
right
was
into it.
interesting too. That was interesting too.
That was interesting. Yeah, we'll get to that. So of course
Yeah.
we were in court this morning with the latest hearing for Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow Daybell. And well, as usual, it was a little interesting. Lori arrived first
Mhm.
in ankle chains, and I don't recall her being in ankle chains last time, but maybe I just didn't notice.
I don't think she was. We weren't sitting
Okay.
in the right spot to say that definitively, but I don't think so because last time I remember looking at her feet and posting that she had on shoes that kind of looked like brown slippers.
Yes.
I did not see ankle chains. So,
Yeah, so she had ankle chains. She was dressed a lot more casually than she has been. She
mhm.
was wearing leggings instead of slacks. She had yeah, maybe they were shackles, right, Janet? Remember that case? Remember that with Daryl,
Daryl Brooks,
Daryl Brooks. Oh my goodness.
the shackles
Um
that weren't.
yeah,
Yes.
shackles, the shackles that weren't shackles. Um so she had very much jail makeup on, bright red lipstick, and sort of drawn on kind
Ooh,
of not so great eyebrows.
he
They
has
look
some real
different
sharpy
than last
eyebrows
time.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely the hair curled in ringlets like usual and not combed out. So it was odd.
Her hair looked
Ah,
crunchy.
okay. Nate Eaton said it was the first time. Okay. I'm glad to hear
Okay.
somebody else noticed that too, because Chad and Lori both were in ankle shackles. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure. They were in Ada County last week. And I wonder if in Ada County they have to wear ankle shackles, and if
Oh,
maybe
maybe
that's why they're starting to do that,
to do it
because they
here.
weren't shackled at all last time.
No, neither of them at all, which is
Oh,
wild for people accused of the things they've done, you know?
yeah.
But her hair looked crunchy, dirty,
Mhm.
maybe.
Yeah.
It
Maybe
it
like it
looked
hadn't been fully combed out in a while.
yeah. Yeah, her hair looked, not clean. Yeah.
Mhm. And she was sort of wearing 2 shirts and black leggings, and
Mhm,
then, like, sort of short, like, ankle height, Ugg boots, and then
mhm.
the ankle shackles. Um, she just we couldn't get over how much she just reminded us of a little girl.
Mhm.
She sort of skipped in, just
Oh, yeah.
like
I
nothing's
So
going
she comes
on.
in with the same bailiff every time, this woman,
Yeah,
from Madison,
yeah.
and when you put your toddler down and you give him a little push and you say, "Walk to daddy," and then daddy's waiting a little while away and they throw their little hands up and daddy picks them up. That's how it looks. You
Yeah,
have the bailiff that walks in, Lori's kind of bouncing around in front of her, and then she kind of gestures to her and she runs right over to her attorneys and they accept her into the box and they sit down together and it
mhm.
is so bizarre.
And she's just sort of bouncy and smiley and giggly,
Mhm.
like, this is not real life.
Mhm.
This is very serious stuff, but she sure does
Mhm.
not seem to recognize that, I guess,
No.
is I don't think
No,
it's an act at all. No,
I don't either.
it
This
is
seems very
very,
much her
very much just
or who she is now.
who she is now. Yeah. So that was fairly interesting. So the
Mhm.
first part of the hearings today were motions that were filed by her attorneys. So Pryor was there, but Chad was not there for those motions.
Mhm.
Came in later. So we had several motions to review. Let's see. So there were 5 motions on her behalf today. Let's see. The first was to dismiss due to violation of speedy trial.
Mhm.
They had a big, kind of back and forth on that. So there's 2 ways to look at speedy trial. One is what Idaho says, and then there's the other, which is what the Constitution says.
Mhm.
Um, so Idaho says, you have to have a trial begin within 6 months of indictment. And, so her indictment didn't come until after she was released from the hospital, which has been 6 months and 44 days. We
Yeah.
tell you because that's what her attorney said. So we're 44
Mhm.
days over. Um, the Constitution actually says a year.
Mhm.
So there's been a lot of talk that her constitutional rights are being violated. That's not true.
No.
The statute in Idaho is 6 months. The
Mhm.
Constitution says a year, and that
Yeah.
we're nowhere near that. So the prosecution was kind of like, yeah, I mean, I know we're up against the Idaho statute, but there have been a lot of reasons for why, and having these cases joined and all the stuff that's happened. Anyway, and she basically said her constitutional rights are not being violated.
Mhm.
We're a long ways from that.
Yeah.
So the judge basically said that he will file his response on paper, a written response.
He said, this is not something that should take long. Next week."
Yeah,
And it kind of seemed like, why are you even waiting? You obviously know
yeah.
what you're going to say. So,
He's going to deny it. We all know
of course.
they're not going to dismiss. And her attorney was like, the only thing that you can do in this situation is dismiss.
Mhm.
And then maybe the prosecution could refile the charges later, but they couldn't because this would be with prejudice because her constitutional rights are being violated. But again, that is actually not true.
Mhm.
So, we think it's very likely that he will deny the dismissal.
Mhm.
But can you imagine if they dismiss this and then have to refile the whole damn thing? And oh, Jesus, I don't even want to think about it.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So that was pretty brief. And yeah, the judge was real like, yeah, okay, I'll tell you next week. Like he wasn't.
Don't call me, I'll call you. Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Um, so then the second motion was on the individual interviews during voir dire during the jury selection. So her attorneys want to individually interview potential jurors to ask them questions about their religion, which there's no way that's getting in, their experiences with domestic violence and other violent crime, and their opinion on the death penalty.
Mhm.
So the prosecutor was like, yeah, you're not going to be asking them about their religion. I
Yep.
really don't think they're going to be able to. That's pretty
I don't
that's
think
pretty in
so.
territory.
Yeah. Now they were saying basically that they feel like at this point that religion plays such a role that they feel like they need to be able to ask what people's religion are because this is such a sensitive religious topic. And in trial, there's going to be a lot of talk of religion, and we want to know who we're going to offend, basically.
Yeah, and that was very interesting that
Hmm.
they said that John Thomas said that that religion is going to be a hot button issue in this try. Yeah, this try. He first said hot link
Hot links issue.
and then
He
he
said
said hot button.
a hot
That
links
was funny.
issue, a hot button issue.
Yeah,
We
which is
laughed.
really true. It is, and we learned today a little bit more about why, which I think
Yes.
we've been wondering, when is this going to come up? When are the wackadoodle beliefs going to become
Hmm.
a part of this? And Yeah, so that was a big part of it. So the prosecutor basically agreed with them, but said, first of all, we're gonna object every time you try to ask somebody their religion because you can get into discrimination issues over asking
Right.
them their religion. So I
Mhm.
bet that doesn't get in.
Mhm.
They talked about they would rather do more small groups and do
Mhm.
individual questioning. Basically, if a juror is like, I don't really want to answer this question publicly,
Mhm.
then they get, do individual. And that's
Yeah.
pretty much what the judge said too. He said, yes, we'll do small groups, 10 to 20 people at a time.
Mhm.
I don't even know how many they'll go through, several
It'll be
hundred
interesting to
probably.
know how many they summon. Yeah.
Right. It'll be several hundred, I'll bet you.
Mhm.
Um, wasn't it? Oh, was it Alec Murdoch that was like 400? I think it
I
was
think
about
so. It was
400.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the judge said the same thing, but he did agree with the prosecutor that they want to keep the individual um, interviews down to a minimum and only when it's absolutely necessary
Yeah.
because it's going to take forever
Mhm.
if they go through that. So
Yeah.
went through that. Um, that was fairly minor.
Mhm.
Then the third motion was so they have all these deadlines coming up about
Mhm.
disclosure of discovery, disclosure of witness lists, that kind of thing. Um, and so they're basically the defense wants to know who the prosecution is going to be calling. The
Mhm.
thing that's interesting about this is that the deadline isn't actually till February 27th. So I don't even know why we were arguing about this today, nor did the judge. He was pretty
Yeah.
irritated about it because the defense had filed that they needed to know this information right
Yeah.
now, and they have till the 27th.
Mhm.
But what they wanted to know specifically, because they're objecting to the state, including calling Michael Wellner. And so Michael Wellner is a forensic psychiatrist, right,
Mhm.
Katie?
Yep.
Looks like he's like a professional expert witness.
Mhm.
And they were objecting to him being called, even though he
Mhm.
has not been named as being called just yet. So
Yeah.
somehow they think he might be called, and if he is, they want to object to that.
Mhm.
Was pretty interesting. So prosecutor Smith is the one who was responding on this, and she said, that they're following the rule and they're going to following the deadline, and they'll be turning that stuff over by 227.
Mhm.
And basically was saying they're also waiting for the witness list from Lori's team. It's a little bit of like pointing back and forth at each
Mhm.
other. And the judge was kind of like, neither one of you, we haven't met the deadline yet. So what's the
Right.
big deal?
It's not even due, so why is this conversation happening? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Michael
So,
Wellner he's got some pretty good accolades. I think this is going to be very interesting with him.
mhm,
So he is a forensic psychiatrist and the chairman of the forensic panel,
mhm.
and is well known for testifying as an expert witness. He's also a CBS news correspondent.
Oh, is he?
Oh, sorry, ABC news
ABC
correspondent.
News correspondent. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He consulted and provided testimony in the Elizabeth Smart trial.
Oh,
Yeah.
now that is very interesting because we're looking at the same base religion in which things
Yeah.
spun out of, because
Mm-hmm.
that was also a Mormon extremist
Yeah.
situation.
Well, they said that his testimony would be based on, uh, I
Hyper
want to
religiosity.
hyper religiosity versus blaming religion for your actions.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
were the words that were used by Counselor Smith.
Yep. And this is the first time we've been wondering, were they going to bring in the wackadoodle religious beliefs and how they
Hmm.
were using that as, justification for their crime. And this is on the
Hmm.
part of the prosecutor.
Yeah.
And Smith said they do expect to have an expert in hyper religiosity, but they're not
Hmm.
naming names at this point of who that will be. But that witness list will be
Hmm.
out on the 27th, just like,
Yes. So more study into Michael Wellner and the Elizabeth Smart case incoming.
Yes,
Watch for it.
definitely. I
Yeah.
wonder if there's any footage of him.
Oh, I'm guessing he's done a ton of interviews. He's done a ton of TV. He's pretty prolific,
Let's
actually.
see what we
So,
can find on him because that's really interesting. That was a very interesting
mhm,
reason to bring
crossover.
him in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the judge was like, well, this deadline hasn't even passed, so we don't even actually need a ruling on this. He was kind of like, I don't know why we're arguing about this because it doesn't even matter right now, which
Hmm.
I thought was kind of funny. Then the fourth motion was pre selection instructions for potential jurors. And they wanted, I don't know, they're basically just arguing over how the instructions are written.
Hmm.
And Thomas was on this one for defense. He wanted to make the instructions brief and user friendly. And then he made a point of letting the prosecution know that he was offended
Oh,
at
yes.
their response because they said he had misstated the law. This
What he said was so
was
funny.
so great.
We thought the prior really should have reached over and handed him his pearls. He
Yes,
said, you know how somebody says to you, no offense, but I don't really like your haircut, but you feel offended anyway? Well, that's how I feel about this brief. I am offended because they said that they didn't like the way I wrote this. And that is just, it was so funny.
it
I
was.
loved it. And the judge was like, oh,
Yeah.
yawn, moving on. Yeah.
Yeah, like, give me a friggin' break. So, basically, this Idaho has, like, a template for juror instructions,
Hmm.
but that template does not include multiple offenders,
Hmm.
multiple victims, and multiple potential, um, penalties.
Hmm.
And so Prosecutor Smith basically said, I would like us to base this off from the Idaho jury instructions and then just expand it
Yeah.
based on, you know, this case.
Hmm.
So what happened is that Lori's attorneys like wrote their own and the prosecution used the state ones. And
Hmm.
that's where they're saying that the state ones were just too complicated. Well, they're probably written more in legalese, but basically it's the judge that actually makes this decision, and he said he's
Hmm.
taking everyone's suggestions into consideration.
Consideration. It was
And
also kind of a go F yourselves,
it kind
like,
of was.
this is on me to figure out. Thank you so much for your concern. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and it was just funny because he was again like, we'll be releasing that to you so that you can give us comment, and he's probably like, God damn it, I am going to be so annoyed at the comments. He was just kind of irritated the whole day. Like, are we here doing a bunch of pointless stuff? And it kind of, in a lot of ways, was.
Mhm.
Um, oh, okay. Do you want to tell him about when the car horn honked?
That was kind of funny. There was, yeah, just, whatever was happening with somebody was testifying, saying something, and
Hmm.
I think it was the prosecutor that was saying something, and there was a car horn outside that did that da 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 kind of sound,
Hmm.
And Lori's ears perked up, and she looked at the prosecutor, or at a Archibald, her attorney, and went, and she laughed, and he just kind of laughed with her. It was like, again, a little child. She was
Hmm.
delighted by that sound.
Yeah, yeah. Just little kiddish, very much.
Hmm.
Also, what about when Smith mentioned that, we
Yes, this
need
was
special
interesting.
instructions because this is
Lori,
a case regarding murdered children?
yes, Lori had her head down. She was kind of fiddling with her fingernails. And yet, Prosecutor Smith said, in the case where children have been murdered, and Lori's head shot up and she looked at her, and then she looked at her attorney. It was almost like this was brand new news to her. Like, someone's kids were killed. That was her response. Like, she didn't say that, but I mean, that's the way she acted. And I thought,
Hmm.
wow, okay. Again, we are not in a place of reality over here. That was wild.
No, yeah, that was wild. So yeah, the judge was like, okay, stop fighting.
Hmm.
Uh, I'll take your suggestions to heart, whatever. And then the fifth motion was a motion to compel, and this one was filed by the state. And this was just basically again about like discovery for the penalty phase.
Mm-hmm.
This was stuff that he wanted from the defense. The defense has already given it to him. And he was like, yeah, we're fine. We got it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just stupid, really. It was stupid. It was another, well, it doesn't have a deadline until the 27th. So why are we talking about it? So it was kind of a nothing thing too. And they said, okay, well, we'll just suspend
Mm-hmm.
this for now. And if there's a problem after 2/27, we'll talk about it again.
Mm-hmm.
But then this was another point, Katie, that you had noticed her whispering and chuckling with her attorney.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's with Archibald. She's very attached to Archibald,
Mm-hmm.
which is
She sort of
interesting.
snuggles up to him,
She
like
does.
in her chair.
She turns her chair to him. She's always kind of
Mm-hmm.
leaning into him. Um, it's interesting because now Thomas sits on the other side of Archibald, and Archibald's kind of in the middle between them. She doesn't really seem to give much attention at all to Thomas. It's Archibald.
No.
He is
Yeah,
her
definitely.
protector here. He's her safety. Uh, and he's very careful and kind with her. And
Yeah.
he giggles along with her and chats with her, and you can see he's really handling her with kid gloves, very
Yeah.
fragile gloves because she is. I know some people have taken that to think that maybe he's fallen for the golden vagina. I absolutely don't believe that's true at all.
No.
I feel like he's recognizing her mental health for what it is and treating her very carefully.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a father figure thing, you
It
know?
is.
If you
It
kind of
is.
looked over at your dad and smirked or giggled together about something during a church or proceeding or something, that's
Yeah.
kind of what it looks like.
Yep.
Yeah.
It does. It's pretty odd.
Hmm.
So the judge was like, okay, we'll talk about this on the 27th. Like,
Hmm.
because see, the 27th is the pretrial conference. That's going to be a really, really important
Yes.
hearing. They're going to be talking about if, all of their discovery has been turned in. Although later on in the
Hmm.
hearing, this did get extended. The discovery
Hmm.
stuff actually got extended for 2 more weeks because
Hmm.
of a lot of whining on John Pryor's part. But that is also an opportunity for plea deals to
Yep.
happen is on that day. And anytime after that too. But
Hmm.
that is an important day that
Yeah.
maybe we will see a plea deal. I don't know.
That would be something. I would give
Mhm.
anything for us to be sitting in that courtroom when the prosecutor or defense stands up and says, Your Honor, our client is prepared to plea.
Right.
What? I don't think our little Twitter fingers could get it out fast enough.
I know.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So then they called a recess so that then they could bring Chad in. But as the judge is calling the recess, Archibald speaks up and says, we know Chad hasn't been here during Lori's hearings, but Lori would like to stay
Hmm.
during Chad's portion of the hearings. Is that okay? And the prosecution didn't have any problem with it. And the judge was like, well, their cases are joined. So really, she has every right to sit and listen if she wants to.
Yeah.
So they stayed during Chad's portion, even though this really didn't have anything to do with her. It was filings that were made specifically by his attorney. But it was
Hmm.
interesting because Chad had not asked to be there during her
Mm-mm.
portion of the hearings.
No, Pryor was there,
Again, hmm
but he
staring out
wasn't
into the
sitting in the
audience,
box.
making eye contact with all of us with this weird grin and
Why is Pryor so
creepy.
creepy? He doesn't know how to smile. His smile is this
Weird little
weird
leer,
kind of
sort
half
of.
smile, but it reeks of like either please don't hate me because I'm representing Chad, or I'm trying to not seem so scary, and I don't know what it is, but the smile is creepy
It's weird.
AF. And he sits on the front row because he doesn't like when he's not in with Chad, he doesn't sit in the box where the other attorneys and folks are. So he sits on
Yeah.
the front row and he's constantly angling himself around to look around the courtroom, which you guys, there were when we first got there was only 9 of us. I think 2 or 3 more reporters trickled in and a handful of cops. There couldn't have been more than 15 people in the
Right.
entire
Yeah, it's a
viewing area.
small group.
I mean, he's literally kind of going one by one trying to make eye contact and give you a
You had
little
to just kind of look away from him on purpose
weirdo look.
because he kept looking. He kept doing that to me. He kept looking at me, and I just kind of look away, like, I don't want to. What are you doing, dude?
No one else was
Really?
doing that. Quit smiling at everybody. You look weird.
Yeah. Um. So that happened. And then so then Chad comes in, also
Shackled
shackled at the ankles, dressed as in his
or
usual
shackled. Dare to
white
dream.
shirt and tie. Yeah, that'd be great. But a weird thing happened. First time I've ever seen it happen. When he sat down, he looked over at Lori several times with this weird little creepy half smile.
Mhm.
And
Remember
she
when
was
Chad
looking
was
back.
first arraigned and he smiled all the way through that, and people
Yes.
were very grossed out by that, and then after that, he's been resting toad face all the while?
Yeah.
It was that weird, creepy. Chad also doesn't know how to smile.
No.
Just like he and Pryor are
Really
cut from
weird.
the same cloth.
Yeah.
But
So that was odd.
Lori
Yeah.
pulled the classic schoolgirl move of trying to make your boyfriend jealous.
She did.
And Chad's over on this side, giving her the weird ass smile. And Lori's over on this side, facing Chad, facing kind of sideways to her attorney, talking to her attorney and laughing and playing with her hair. And it was all flirtatious. It
It
was
was
wild.
it was creepy.
Yep.
But he saw all of it.
Yeah.
But he did actually make eye contact a couple of times with her, it was weird. The whole thing
That's
was
not
weird.
happened before.
So
Yeah.
then he took up his usual stance, which is to sit straight ahead,
Hmm.
staring straight ahead, not making eye contact with anyone, with his hands flat on the table. Like not in his lap, they're on the table, like pushing down.
Hmm.
And he sat like that for the whole rest of his hearings.
Hmm. He didn't turn and look at her again
No, he didn't.
once the
It was
trial went
weird.
court, or once court started, and then
Yeah.
once they were excused. Even there wasn't another look exchanged.
Mm-mm.
She was looking at him. I mean, through she pretty openly looks at him, but he just does not return that.
Right, right. No, he doesn't. But it was weird that he did today at the
Yeah, that
beginning.
was new.
The energy between them was strange today. It was different than last time.
Uh huh.
They both seemed a little more beat down and a little more off today
This is
than
the
they did the
first time
last time.
Chad seemed kind of childlike.
He did.
Partly it was the shackles, because the
Yeah.
way he stumbled in the shackles was like a little guy that's got a real full diaper,
Hmm.
and kind of stepping forward like this. Maybe he
Yeah.
did. I don't know. What do I know?
Gross.
Uh, yeah.
Ugh.
But he seemed more demure. Yeah. But
He
the
did,
glances
definitely.
between them, the looks between them was very interesting. We're literally just sitting there staring at this frozen, and I'm like, "Are you seeing this?" And she's like, "I'm seeing it."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Holy shit.
"Holy shit!" Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first motion on Chad's behalf was the renewed motion to sever. And this is supposedly to protect Chad's constitutional rights.
Hmm.
And just as Pryor starts to present, Lindsay Blake objects.
Hmm.
And she says, uh, we're asking that you not talk about this today. We're asking that their initial response was that they wanted a ruling on this without even having a hearing because the judge has already ruled on severance.
Hmm.
So then they have this big conversation because Pryor starts to talk about all the DNA that he hasn't got and all of the whining about stuff he needs and how Your Honor, you cannot possibly have enough time, all that stuff. Well, here's the problem. This motion to sever was filed quite a while ago, like still in December, I think in December. So it did not actually directly address the DNA as the reason for severance. And Lindsay
Hmm.
Blake speaks up and says, Your Honor, I'm going to object to this because there's nothing in this filing that says that this is what Mr. Pryor was going to be talking about today. And we
Hmm.
are not prepared to talk about this because that's not what he said he was going to talk about.
Yeah.
He should have refiled it after the last hearing to address the issues with the DNA evidence, but he
Hmm.
didn't.
No.
And so she's like, I would like to see this rescheduled so that we can see, a filing of exactly what he's going to be talking about so that we can be ready. She said, we can't possibly have all of this information right on the top of our heads or even with us. So, basically you have to file for, we're going to talk about this and it's going to be in this context. We're going to talk about this evidence or whatever, right? Well, his
Hmm.
request for severance didn't do that. Although we all knew that's what this was going to be about, because in the last hearing, that's what the big argument was about.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, she was basically just holding him to it, that like, hey, you didn't file to say that this was going to be, a fight over the DNA thing. And so they agreed that Pryor agreed as well. He was very, how he's so ingratiating to the judge. Oh, Your Honor, I would be happy, Your Honor, to discuss this on the 23rd, blah, 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 blah.
More than happy, Judge. More than happy.
So on the 23rd, there is another hearing, and
Mm-hmm.
that is when they're going to discuss the severance. So the judge basically just extended this
Mm-hmm.
and pushed it back to February 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
And so Pryor has until the 13th to file this motion again with what he's going to be talking about. The state
Mm-hmm.
can respond. It has to be in by the 21st. Pryor can respond back by the 22nd, and then they will be in court on the 23rd over
Mm-hmm.
it. So again, this is about him and his expert not getting the DNA stuff in
Mm-hmm.
time, and all that stuff that came out last time in court. So anyway, he continued that. Yes, and they did say there's some evidence they're going to send out to a different lab.
Yes, they have sent out to a different lab that says they can do it faster.
Yeah.
You know that old saying, when somebody tells you who they are, believe them?
Yeah.
Clear back last summer when the Idaho lab said, we can't handle this evidence, it needs to go elsewhere. And then suddenly it is being done there. It shouldn't have been done there.
Yeah.
They have not been able to do this in a timely manner. That's evidence that they were not able to extract DNA from, that another lab sounds like says they can.
Yeah.
This should have not been left with them in the first place. They weren't prepared for it.
No, and
Why
shouldn't have
wasn't
been
this
with them
all
this
done at the
long.
No. I don't understand why this wasn't all done at the FBI.
I know.
I
I've had
just
that
don't
question
get
too.
it.
Where the FBI's been around from day one.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Why the
So-
FBI didn't handle all of the forensics or the lab forensics, I don't get.
Well, and Lindsay Blake actually said that it's very possible that they will have that DNA evidence back
Mm-hmm.
by the time of the next hearing in 2
Yeah.
weeks.
So what's taking the Idaho State lab like freaking years,
Mhm.
the other lab can have back in a couple of weeks? Wow.
Yeah, way better.
Yeah.
So then motion 3 was time to extend time to file witness list. So
Mm-hmm.
this, there's been all this talk about their witness lists and their discovery lists and stuff for trial due on the 27th. And so Pryor said that he is waiting on his GPS expert, his forensic expert, and DNA expert to submit their reports to him, and that they are not going to be back in time on the 27th because it's taken so long to get this information to them so that they could do their reports. And so he was asking for more time on that. The judge did grant that and gave him 2 more weeks. And so that will all be due now on the 13th of March.
Yeah.
There was a little kerfuffle because the prosecutor agreed to that, Pryor agreed to it. So then Archibald spoke up and was like, hey, what about us? And it was pretty funny because the prosecutor did not want to give Archibald any extra time.
Yeah. They were like, you're
Because
fine.
he hasn't asked for it. He didn't file for anything. They're like, Pryor has given us some very clear reasons why. So what's the big deal?
Yeah.
Ultimately, they basically all got it, but they got kind of a like, hey, if you can get your expert witness stuff to us quicker, we would appreciate it. But it's pretty much been pushed back now to March 13th for all of those witness lists and stuff.
Yeah. That was interesting. The way the prosecution, I was really surprised. I figured they'd be like, oh, yeah, of course, everyone. And they're like, well, why do you need it?
Right. Yeah. They were
For
like,
the same reasons that Pryor needs it, actually.
Yeah, but they hadn't asked for it.
No, they haven't.
Which was interesting. They also implied that both defense teams implied that they just got this 1,100
page, yeah.
A 1,188 page report as John Thomas made sure to make sure we all knew that it wasn't just 1100, but it was an extra 88
Mhm.
above that.
And John Pryor made sure we knew that he didn't get it till a Thursday afternoon.
Yes, a Thursday afternoon, Your Honor.
Mhm.
Apparently, this is from law enforcement. We think from the FBI, actually,
Mhm.
that both defense teams are pretty mad about because it's stuff from the very beginning of this case.
That they've all been waiting on and asking
And they
for a
finally
long
just
time.
got it. And so this was one of their problems with wanting more time is that
Mhm.
there's a lot of information in this thing, you know?
Yeah.
So
It's voluminous to say the least, I
it,
think.
it is voluminous to
You
say the
know,
least. Yeah.
someone used the whole bottle of conditioner on this one.
Yeah, I think so. So that's when the judge closed the public portion of the hearing.
Mhm.
And so they did have a sealed hearing after, which was 404B evidence.
Yes, so I have 404B pulled up in the Idaho Code. So 404B is crimes, wrongs, or other acts, prohibited uses. Evidence of a crime, wrong, or other act is not admissible to prove a person's character in order to show that on a particular occasion the person acted in accordance with the character. So that's a prohibited use. Permitted uses. Notice in a criminal case, the evidence may be admissible for another purpose, such as providing motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, absence of mistake, or lack of accident. In a criminal case, the prosecutor must A, file and serve reasonable notice of the general nature of any such evidence that the prosecutor intends to offer at trial, and B, do so reasonably in advance of the trial or during the trial if the court, for good cause shown, excuses lack of pretrial notice. So we're thinking that the prosecutor has probably filed something saying, we plan on talking about these things. And yes, we think it is the Chandler FOIA documents. I agree with you, Philly, totally, that this has to do with Charles's death. We are planning on talking about these things, and this is why. And they were meeting with the judge for Lori's camp to say that's not fair, and this is why. And, for the
Yeah,
judge to decide if they get to talk about her former bad acts or if they don't.
right. Yeah. Because they said that this could potentially be evidence that is not used at trial
Hmm.
that could taint the jury pool.
Hmm.
So they will have decided today if that is allowable or not admissible. So,
Which there's a lot there. You think about everything
yeah.
leading up to Charles's death,
Hmm.
the disappearance to Hawaii, the death threats upon Charles that have been proven by his legal team, the trips to the temple with Chad, the podcasts and the speaking that went way off the rails.
Yeah.
After Charles's death, the way she handled and treated things with his family, the way
Hmm.
Chad called the funeral home and tried to get the cheapest cremation possible. Thanks,
Yes.
Chad. The way Lori handled JJ's school and the lies
Hmm.
she told them, the lies she told about JJ's service dog, the lies
Yeah.
she told about moving. There's a lot there. It's
There
not just
is.
Charles's death, if that wasn't enough, which it should be, but there's a lot there that they're going to
But
want to talk
all this
about.
other stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'll be really curious to see
Hmm.
what is going to be allowed there.
The problem I think the defense will have is that any of that could potentially be used to show motive, you know?
Definitely. Yeah. I'm sure that that will come in as part of motive.
Listen, if Alec Murdoch's past bad acts can be entered into his murder trial, surely Lori Vallow's can.
Right. Yeah. So that's where it ended today.
Yep.
So court again on the 23rd, where we're going to see, we're going to talk about the severance. We're going to see where everything is at with that and what's going to happen if that's
Hmm.
going to happen. And then the 27th, which is pretrial conference, which is
Yeah.
also a big deal. So lots
It's
of stuff
it's
that
getting
happened.
big.
Lots
Yep.
of stuff that didn't. There was some interesting stuff today and some really pointless stuff today, but it's always interesting just to see what the interactions are going to be like with these two, how they're
Hmm.
interacting with their attorneys and with each other and just
Hmm.
in general. they did not seem in good places, either one of them today.
No, no, they didn't. It's also, to me, it's kind of interesting because I'm like, hey, judge, this is supposed to go to trial in April. How long can you keep pushing stuff off and saying, let's talk about it next time? How long can you
Mhm.
be like, oh, I'll rule on that. I'll let you know. He's got a stack of things that he's not ruled on.
Yeah.
Like, how long can he keep pushing stuff out?
Well, there is basically a drop dead date here, and they
Yeah,
are preparing. They are clearly preparing, where they've
yeah.
already been to Ada County, and they're
Hmm.
getting ready for this. So,
Yeah, that was pretty fascinating to hear that the reason all
mhm,
that was sealed last week is because they were actually in Ada
yeah,
talking to them about how to do this. Yeah.
very interesting.
Yep.
Well, there you have it.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us, whether you're live or after the fact. We'll be back next week with all our usual content. And if you are a member or if you're a patron, we will be back tonight with the Psychic Hour.
Mhm.
And we just appreciate all of you. Please be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment. It definitely helps us to grow.
Yeah.
And you know it. We are the True Crime Squad. Thanks for
Take
being
care.
here.